All right, so today's our second day of Module 17, and we're talking about graphical user interface applications. Today I'm going to review a little bit of what we talked about last time, and then I'm also going to give you a few additional pieces of information and a little bit more code to play around with, and then I'll review assignment 17 and give you plenty of time to work on that stuff. So, creating a graphical user interface using TK interface, the module for creating GUIs with Python. This is sort of the standard library for doing this, although there are others. This is the most commonly used one, probably the most popular one as well. So we talked a little bit last time about how to create a window with widgets and make it a little bit interactive. So on this one, I actually took my calculator, which calculates the average of two numbers, and I created a basic interface. Looks like this. And you can see here, all you do is put in the two numbers, and then it gives you the average. Nothing fancy at all, no formatting or anything like that. But you can see kind of how it works here. I've got a function called doCalc that takes the text for the label and changes that text to the following string, which is that plus that divided by 2, converted to a string here. So this is the first entry box. This is the second entry box. And then you can see down here, I'm calling that function as the command that's associated with the button click. There's nothing really fancy or exciting about any of that stuff. If I wanted to sort of make it a little bit nicer, you can see here, if I open those up side by side, this is the old one here on the smaller window, and then the larger window, I've actually taken things and I've rearranged it a little bit so the average appears up here, and then I've got some more white space. It just looks a little bit nicer. So those things are accomplished pretty easily. And the way we did those is I put each of the controls in its own frame, and then I set the padding Y, so the vertical padding and the horizontal padding for each frame that contains a control, so that it adds a little space. So if I'm talking about padding, the way this works is that, let's say I have a text box like this, or a label, or whatever I want, that I've got as my main part of the control. If I put that in a frame, remember, putting a frame around something kind of puts an invisible border around it like that. So if I want to have more space in between my controls, because normally they'll just butt up against one another, if I want to have space between the controls, then I'm going to set the padding Y, see, pad Y, and that tells the layout manager how many pixels to put between the control and the border of the frame that it's inside. And then padding X does that horizontally. So if I set all of the padding for these controls, then I can have a lot of control over how those controls are laid out on the page. So those are just another couple of attributes that you can add to a frame, in addition to border and color and all that stuff. And then you can see here that I've got the hierarchy for this set. Window is my main window. You can see each of the frames belongs to the window. That's what that does. And then each control belongs to its own frame. So I've got a label, a couple of labels in the first frame, and I've got a label and a text entry in the second frame. So I'm grouping all of those things together, and now I can put those in the way I want them to. So now let's go a little bit further. And I'm going to combine stuff from the last two modules that we did. So this module with TK interface, and then you'll see here I'm importing from the Pillow library image and another library called Image TK. Image TK is a set of functions that allow you to take an image using the Pillow library and translate it so that it can be displayed in a graphical user interface. So you can put an image now in a label inside a TK interface. So I'm creating the interface and the main window, setting the size of it, and then you can see here, I'm going to import this image, buildings.jpg, and right here, I'm taking that image and I'm translating that image to a TK image by the name of test. And then finally, I'm creating a label that's 150 pixels by 150 pixels, and I'm setting the image attribute of that label to the image test, or the TK image test. So that when I run that, it doesn't really do anything very exciting, but it does put a 150 by 150 piece of that image in a label in the TK. So now I can use that to do something even more interesting, right? So if I've got this, same kind of deal, except I have a function here called change pick. And what this function does is it takes a random square, a 300 by 300, from a random location in the image, and it crops that square out, and then it displays it as the new image. So if I run that, now every time I hit change image, it'll give me a new piece, a random section of that image. So now I'm interacting with an image on here and updating it based on that. The interface is very simple. You can see it's got an image display, a label, and a button, and that's it. So what I can do now is I can take my filters. I'm going to grab one of my filters from the Pillow project I did last week, and I've already put my filters in functions. So I'm going to take this filter A here, and I'm just going to copy that whole thing. And I will have to make a few changes to it, but I'm going to pull it into this set of code here. And I'm just going to paste it right there. Making sure it's indented properly. I don't want it to be a part of that first one. So I'm going to bring in the images from this application as globals. I could pass them as parameters, but I'm just going to do it the easy way this time. And I no longer need this part of it. So I'm going to get rid of the if else, because for this application, I just want it to filter what's already there. Okay, and what this filter does is it splits it into channels, changes them around, and then puts it back together. I also don't need it to do that, but I do need it to, on the very last line, change the pillow image to an image that can be displayed. And then update that label. So now, when I run this app, oops, one more thing I got to do. I have to create a button for this command. So I'm going to create a button that will run that filter. Piece of cake. I'm going to copy this button first. And let's change the name of the new one to filter, button filter. Now it's got its own name, filter image, and we want to run filter A. Remember to take the parentheses off of there. So now let's run this. And I've got the ability to change the image. But now I've got another button here that when I want to filter it, I can just view the filtered image by pressing the button. So now I've got this ability to merge the images app with my graphical user interface. You can see it's a lot easier than it was before. If we go back to the other app that was command line only, if I run that, remember it's more tedious to open the image, and then once I open it, then I'm going to filter it, and then I'm going to view it, and then it opens up in a separate window. With the graphical user interface, I'm able to do things very quickly with it and see the results immediately in that same window. So there's some definite advantages to being able to do a graphical user interface. So that's just another couple of things that you can think through as you're doing the graphical user interface. For this assignment, for assignment 17, the challenge is to take any one of our previous assignments and turn it into a graphical user interface. So you could, for example, you might want to take the rock, paper, scissors assignment and let somebody choose rock, paper, or scissors. And maybe it even shows like a hand that does rock, paper, or scissors based on what the computer chooses, or something like maybe you want to have a creative way of presenting who won or something like that. So there's a lot of things that you can do that are very interesting. You could show the score as it updates, as people get points or something like that. You could do a number guessing game. You could do the bank account if you want to challenge yourself, the ATM assignment, or you could do any of the others, just depending on what sparks your interest and what you feel like doing. Any of those assignments would be great as a graphical user interface. And of course, the images assignment, if that's something that interests you, you could do that as well. So those are some of the choices, and that's assignment 17.